Okay. Welcome to the top 10 at 10. Today is May the 28th, 2014. I'm your host, Dan Wright, writer at firedoglake.com, and these are the top 10 stories. Here? Okay. Yeah, it's right here. Story number 10. This has probably gotten a lot of attention on Twitter and elsewhere. This was the New York Times critique of their own book review by their public editor, Margaret Sullivan, Kinsley, Greenwald, and Government Secrets. Michael Kinsley's review of Glenn Greenwald's new book, No Place to Hide, hasn't even appeared in the printed book review yet. That won't happen until June 8th, but it's already infuriated a lot of people. After the review was published online last week, many commenters and readers, and Mr. Greenwald himself, attacked the review, which was not only negative about the book, but also expressed a belief that many journalists find appalling, that news organizations should simply defer to the government when it comes to deciding what the public has a right to know about its secret activities. In the most heavily criticized passage of the review, Mr. Kinsley wrote, "The question is who decides. It seems clear, at least to me, that the private companies that own newspapers and their employees should not have the final say over the release of government secrets, and a free pass to make them public with no legal consequences. In a democracy, which Pace Greenwald we still are, that decision should ultimately be made by the government. No doubt the government will usually be overprotective of its secrets, and so the process of decision-making, whatever it turns out to be, should openly tilt in favor of publication with minimal delay, but ultimately you can't square this circle. Someone gets to decide, and then someone cannot be Glenn Greenwald." It's not the first time that Mr. Kinsley has expressed these kinds of sentiments, as some astute Time readers noted. Tom Barrett of Edmonton, Alberta, wrote to my office with this observation: "I suspect I'm not the only reader to be perplexed at the choice of Michael Kinsley to review Glenn Greenwald's new book. The result is as predictable in its own way as having Jeremy Scahill review it, or James Clapper. Wouldn't it have been better to have chosen someone with a more balanced take on Greenwald and the arguments he made to evaluate the book? One cannot entirely escape the disturbing suspicion that Kinsley was chosen because of Greenwald's repeated criticism of the mainstream media in general and the Times in particular. I am nearly finished reading the book and will make my own judgment, but I feel let down by the decision to choose someone guaranteed to produce a hatchet job." Yeah, it's a vicious attack. Yeah, so she sort of condemned it, and people were upset by the review, and it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, you're definitely going to get a hatchet job when you get Kinsley. Kinsley's a joke. Story number 9 is from the Associated Press. U.S. may decide to train Syrian rebels. Jesus Christ. Still not learning a fucking thing. Pretty amazing. The White House soon may sign off on a project to train and equip moderate Syrian rebel forces, according to Obama administration officials. The move would significantly boost U.S. support to rebels seeking military help to oust Syrian President Bashar Assad. President Barack Obama is considering sending a limited number of American troops to Jordan to be part of a regional training mission that would instruct carefully screened members. Oh my God. Honestly. How many times does this need to happen where they fuck up and train Al-Qaeda, where the guns end up with Al-Qaeda in Syria? How many times? They said Obama has not given the final approval, and there was still internal discussion. Yeah, I imagine the discussion revolves around, aren't we fucking idiots for trying to do this again? In a speech at the U.S. Military Academy on Wednesday, Obama was expected to frame the situation in Syria as a counterterrorism challenge. It's just, the stupidity of this administration is amazing. Story number 8. Bank of England Governor Capitalism doomed if ethics vanish. I guess this guy is the last one to figure out that there's an ethics problem. Mark Carney issues strong critique of city behavior and warns of growing sense the basic social contract is breaking down. Capitalism is at risk of destroying itself unless bankers realize they have an obligation to create a fairer society. The Bank of England governor has warned. Mark Carney said bankers had operated a heads I win, tails you lose system. He questioned whether traders met ethical standards and says those who failed to meet high professional standards should face ostracism. Speaking at a city conference, the bank's governor warned that there was a growing sense that the basic social contract at the heart of capitalism was breaking down amid rising inequality. We simply cannot take the capitalist system, which reduces such plenty and so many solutions, for granted. Prosperity requires not just investment in economic capital, but investment in social capital. Okay. In a strongly worded critique of city behavior in the run-up to the financial crisis, Carney said market radicalism and light-touch regulation had eroded fair capitalism, while scandals such as rigging of LIBOR markets had undermined trust. No shit. Good job, buddy. Story number 7. Workers trying to unionize appeal to Sheryl Sandberg. It's from the Boston Globe. With Facebook executive Sheryl Sandberg coming to town next week, a group of housekeepers, nightclub servers, and other employees of a Boston hotel were trying to turn her now famous campaign for empowering women in their favor. And she didn't meet with them, by the way. Organizers asked Sandberg to meet with the workers. They started an online petition calling for her to become involved in their cause, and they created leaflets depicting the book's cover with faces of housekeepers replacing Sandberg's. Sheryl Sandberg, will you lean in with the women of Harvard's hotel? The Facebook chief operating officer, scheduled to deliver Class Day address at Harvard Wednesday, has sent word she does not have time. Surprise, surprise. Story number 6. It's from the Huffington Post, how the Congressional Black Caucus went to war with itself over Wall Street. For those who don't know, the Congressional Black Caucus was corrupted in the 90s and is now as a significant part of corporate tax. Gwen Moore does not seem like anybody's idea of a corporate stooge. The Milwaukee Democrat, a single mom who once survived on welfare, sponsored efforts to boost public housing, reproductive freedom, food stamp benefits, Social Security payments, etc. So it's strange to see Moore associated with one of the more noxious campaigns around Capitol Hill. The Wall Street effort to unravel key sections of Dodd-Frank. After all, the 2010 financial reform was meant to curb the very same excesses that not so long ago devastated the economy and put many of Moore's constituents out of their jobs and their homes. The assault on Dodd-Frank relies on support from 3 different groups. The GOP, New Democrats, which is the Pro-Business Coalition, and the Congressional Black Caucus. The CBC is not an organization known for airing its dirty laundry to the public. So the CBC is trying to undermine Dodd-Frank. For the most part, the CBC has used its influence to keep progressive policy priorities on the Democratic agenda. In 2008, it broke with fellow Democrats to kill the first version of the Wall Street bailout. The poor blacks, poor whites, Native American, Latinos getting little help, little assistance, John Lewis of Georgia said at the time. And then they come in here and ask us to bail out Wall Street. I'm not prepared to do that. The bill passed only after a number of CBC members, led by Waters, extracted a promise from Obama for a major foreclosure relief program. And how did that work out? Bamboozled. Suckered. However, as one bank lobbyist put it, sophisticated companies have sophisticated lobbying operations. He explained almost every big bank has a lobbyist who has experience and can work with the Congressional Black Caucus. The industry's term for these lobbyists, CBC specialists. It's a term that grates on black lobbyists, I'd imagine it would. And by targeting this 10 CBC members who sit on the financial services panel, these lobbyists can potentially win over the entire caucus. So apparently there's people within the Congressional Black Caucus fighting this. So there you go. Story number 5 from Pando Daily. Christie can't afford to pay public teacher pensions, but still hands Education Megacorp $82 million in subsidies. Last week, Governor Chris Christie announced he will take $2.4 billion owed to New Jersey's public pension system and use it instead to balance the state's current budget, because that's fiscally responsible. To hear Christie tell it he has no choice, the money simply isn't there. But one group for whom that might be hard to swallow is New Jersey's teachers, particularly, I suppose, math teachers. After all, as public school teachers learn that their pensions won't be funded, education technology and publishing firm Pearson continues to receive a huge taxpayer subsidy from New Jersey. Enacted in late 2012, the deal sees Christie giving Pearson a multi-year subsidy of up to $82 million. In other words, Christie is taking money from public school teachers to ensure that he can continue to support a giant education publisher. That's particularly galling for teachers because Pearson just so happens to be one of the driving forces behind the push for more standardized testing and so-called education, quote, reform, unquote, that many public school teachers and teachers unions vehemently oppose. Good times. Corruption in the Christie administration getting a lot of the deck. Story number 4, crisis of the Eurocrats. A century ago, Europe tore itself apart in what was, for a time, known as the Great War, 4 years of death and destruction on an unprecedented scale. But that was a long time ago. It's hard to imagine a war in today's Europe, which is coalesced around democratic values. But here's the thing, an alarmingly high fraction of the vote is expected to go right-wing. It did go right-wing. This was written before the European elections. The truth is the European project, peace guaranteed by democracy and prosperity, is in deep trouble. The continent still has peace, but it's falling short on prosperity, and in a subtler way, democracy. It's not that subtle. Yeah, so the austerity project has, as we already know, Krugman did not know about it this time, has already sort of backfired and led to a slew of hard-right politicians coming to power in the European Parliament. Story number 3. Brokers use billions of data points to profile Americans. This is from the Washington Post. Are you a financially strapped working mother who smokes, a Jewish retiree with a fondness for Caribbean cruises, or a Spanish-speaking professional with allergies, a dog and a collection of Elvis memorabilia? All this information and much, much more is being quietly collected, analyzed, and distributed by the nation's burgeoning data broker industry, which uses billions of individual data points to produce detailed portraits of virtually every American consumer, the Federal Trade Commission reported Tuesday. The FTC report provided an unusually detailed account of the system of commercial surveillance that draws on government records, shopping habits, and social media postings to help marketers hone their advertising pitches. Data Brokers' portrait features traditional demographics, such as age, race, and income, as well as political leanings or religious affiliation, social security numbers, gun ownership records, favorite movie genres, and gambling preferences. Interest in health issues such as diabetes, HIV, infection, depression can be tracked as well. Great. Private surveillance state and the public surveillance state. It's all here. Good times. Story number 2. Wheeler's third way on net neutrality from the Hill. 8 years ago this week, Phil Weiser, now Dean of University, blah, 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 and I released a third way on network neutrality in which we argued that the current state of the network neutrality debate, like many polarized issues, denies the reasonable concerns articulated on each side and obscures the contours of a sensible solution. We could have written the same statement today. When I first became involved in telecommunications policy in the mid-1990s, the policy-making process looked very different. Some may be happy to see those days gone, welcome to the sharp scrutiny from the public and the media, and the current telecom policy issues receive. I, on the other hand, lament their passing. This guy is a fan of this third way crap. Wheeler's proposed approach, based on Section 706 of the Communications Act, is grounded in the third way that Phil Weiser and I proposed 8 years ago. Admittedly, this is freshly tilled jurisdiction for the FCC, and the key will be to see if Section 706 can carry the needed legal weight. But there's much work to be done to find an appropriate balance for everyone's interest. It is time to get it underway. Let's go back to the days of bipartisan, tough-minded compromise instead of debating over slogans and offering up apocalyptic propaganda about the end of the internet. Let's start finding solutions. Story number 1. Fighting continues in East Ukraine as Russian gas deal deadline approaches. The battle for Donetsk airport raged for another day as casualties continue to pile up. The fight to control the airport was one of the most destructive since the uprising began in East Ukraine after a U.S. and EU-backed coup overthrew the elected president, Viktor Yanukovych. Following the election in West Ukraine of Petro Poroshenko, an election East Ukraine did not participate in, a new assault was launched that has claimed the lives of at least 50 separatist fighters and untold numbers of civilians. As bullets and shrapnel fly in the east, Kiev is in a tense standoff with Russia over natural gas prices and past debts, with Russia's Gazprom threatening to shut down gas supplies in days if Kiev and Moscow do not agree. While energy diversification is a goal for Europe and Ukraine, the possibility that such changes could be made anytime soon, let alone by the summer, are fanciful, if not absurd. For now, at least, Europe and Ukraine need that energy and do not have much of an alternative. So in the coming days, we may see Russia pull the plug on Ukraine and by proxy Europe, something that could further destabilize this situation. This should be interesting. Not a good time to go without power. And that is the top 10 of 10. If you have a story like me to feature the top 10 of 10, please tweet me at DanSWright. And be sure to read all the stories at firedogblake.com. Thanks for watching. See you later.